hard about what you want to be. Step 4. Everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up.
Welcome to Tales from the Field. My name is Bradley Ball, and we are back and better than ever. You are here for Live 360. We are on the road to Live 360, and today we have my good friend, Christopher Schmidt, Principal Program Manager from the Real-Time Intelligence team for Microsoft Fabric, and Matt Grodon, Microsoft MVP. Matt, I have known you for so long that I'm thankful for it. But at the same time, it's crazy for how long I've known you at this point in time. I keep feeling like it was just the other day that you and I got to hang out for the first time and we were working together. But I thought about that, and that's like well over a decade ago at this point in time. I mean, so I was going to say our friendship is definitely a teenager. I don't think it's moody like a teenager, but it's definitely a teenager.
That's true. It has been a while.
But, absolutely. One of my favorite memories of Matt, and I'm just going to out this real quick because it goes to one of my favorite phrases, is he came over to our house for Halloween one year. It was after SQL Saturday, and we were doing this role play exercise. And I had picked, and basically it was a bunch of monsters going to a party, and it was a murder mystery. And one of the monsters had been the murderer. Well, everybody had a script if they were innocent or guilty. And I put letters into a hat, and we all pulled them out. And just for future notice, if anybody ever needs to do this, do capital letters, not lowercase letters, because they confuse the I and the L. And so I picked I, and both people thought that they had the same letter. And so we're going around the room, and it's supposed to be the confession, and Matt's the last person to go. And I'm looking at him like, wow, I can't believe that this is the first time you're at my house. We're playing this game, and you were the one who was the murder person. And he looks up at me and he goes, this isn't going to work out the way you want it to work out. And I went, yep, that's true. So we use that phrase all the time in my house. This isn't going to work out the way you want to work out. But if you're looking for real-time intelligence, you're looking for how to be able to build architectures, this is going to work out the way you want it to work out, because you've got two of the best in the business here to be able to talk about this. So I'm just going to, in a moment, I'm going to throw it up on screen. DP M02 workshop, ETL, KQL, RTI, harnessing data in motion with Microsoft Fabric. This is the pre-conference session that you're going to have at Live 360. And I do want to mention that we have an amazing chance for everybody to be able to get a bit of a discount code. If you use Tales from the Field, all one word, and we'll throw it up in a second on our banners as a discount code. If you go to the full event plus pre-cons, you can get up to $500 off. If you go for the 3 to 4 day event, you can get $300 off. And this is a great discount. This goes, I think, up until when the conference is getting ready to book. So you get that off the regular price. Now is the time to be able to grab it, because there's a $300 discount out there you could get right now, or you could use ours. Either way, we're happy to have you there with us. James Everett, good to see you. Good to have you with us. Donald Parrish, you too. Thank you for being here with us today. All right. So, gentlemen, first question. Whenever I do a pre-con, something has normally inspired me to do it. I've normally got something going on with a customer or a situation, or there's something that I've been really diving into the knowledge base and into the space. And it makes me go, wow, I've got enough content, not just for a session. I could do a full day on this and really help people get from point A to point B. So, Chris, Matt, I'll let you guys flip a virtual coin and pick who's going to go first. But talk to me about what part of the inspiration was for this session. And then I want you to each to tell me how you ended up teaming up on this. And yeah. Matt, I'm going to start with you if that's okay. Okay.
Yeah, because I think my answer might differ from Chris's a bit. So a lot of the marketing around real time has focused on, streaming use cases, basically the IoT sensors, manufacturing, stuff where you're streaming a ton of data off of stuff, but it's not an environment that we all know. When I do a talk on this stuff and I say, who has a lot of streaming data in their architecture? Not a lot of hands go up, a couple. But when I ask who has data that moves around, everybody's hand goes up. So me wanting to me wanting to put a session like this together basically came from wanting to educate people. Like, there are options beyond traditional ETL and things like that to move data around, or maybe not move it at all in some cases. And I wanted people to know, because I didn't feel like the marketing from Microsoft captured a market that could really use this. So that was kind of my motivation. It's just, DBAs and data architects and things like that may have seen real-time intelligence on a keynote or something, and they're like, well, I don't have an airport. I don't have an assembly line. I don't need that. I want them to come to this session and hopefully be like, oh, there are some new kind of tools and tricks that I didn't know about that might be helpful. So my motivation was to work against marketing a little bit, but Chris is probably.
I love that, Matt, because when you and I present together, you always laugh at me and pick on me and call me out in front of the crowd. He's like, Microsoft, folks, Microsoft, here you go, live in the well. So I love that you're bringing this alternative approach, because we do that, right? Yeah, I said do. We bring things that, typically are from a Microsoft-y type sales point. So I love when you're in the room and you bring this alternative approach, especially the medallion architecture that you're going to be speaking about during the workshop. But I'm going to stop there and let Chris, because Brad had asked Matt and Chris. So away to you, Chris.
No, it's just fine. I get it. I mean, both of you are teaming up with them. This is great. Chris, please take it away.
Surprisingly, the less I have to talk, the more I'm fine with. So perfectly fine with me, Daniel. But no, I think my approach is probably a little bit different than I think Matt's, right? Brad, to answer your question, I think, fundamentally, the way we've moved data has really been the same for the last 40 years, right? We wait for it all to be generated. It gets saved as a file. We pick it up at the end of the day, and then we move it wherever it needs to go. And it's very pull. I think of it like driving a car. It's like driving a car and then telling me after I got there how fast I was going. Not super useful. But with the advent of how easy it is to go implement event-driven architectures nowadays with no-code and low-code platforms, a lot of those traditional barriers have been removed. We no longer need to take 5 different tools, chain them together, transform, and kind of stream and figure out like, well, how does this thing glue together? And how does that thing glue together? And like, instead of throwing a bunch of random Lego sets on the ground and being like, okay, go find all the matches, because I think most of us in this audience probably have firsthand experience with that, right? Around like, there's that piece that I need. So being able to get to an easier way to implement that, right? And I think at its core, event-driven architectures allow us to do so much more with data rather than just, I'm going to pull it and then I'm going to build something that's going to tell you how fast you were going after you get there. Really move to building these action systems that allow you to go transform data in flight. It's funny, I think we went from ETL to ELT, and now I think we're at kind of this combination of ELT and ETL at the same time of like, how do I take a lot of these different pieces and leverage the right tool for the right job? Like Matt said, a lot of conversations we have are, well, I don't have sensor data. I don't have these types of streaming scenarios that are typical, but you probably have things that you want to act on and know about and be aware of in real time, or as those things are occurring. And then another kind of common thing we say on our team, every customer, every person, an event-driven use case, like everything you want to know. I was talking to someone over the weekend, and as we're sitting there talking, she got a notification on her phone that was like, hey, my daughter just did something on her application, right? And I think all those are useful indicators that event-driven architecture, it's 2025, it's really what we should be grounding ourselves on, so we can know about these things as they're occurring, right? So we know in the moment when these things are happening, because telling me it rained today, tomorrow isn't super useful. Just like telling me how fast I was going when I got somewhere also isn't super useful. But knowing in the moment, those things are very powerful.
I love it. So, and let me take this next question then. I'm going to throw this back to both of you. So I know we have to do this probably generically. We can't specifically say the name of folks, but I think it's really helpful when we talk about real-time intelligence and real-time streaming kind of workloads to say, here's how we take an actual workload that we've seen exist that people are using, and here's how we apply a real-time architecture with this. And the first one I think about is years ago when I was at Live 360. I was sitting down at one of the tables. They've got a birds of a feather luncheon. Everybody gets a table. And one of the people that had come and sat down with me was from a hospital. And they were specifically telling me that they needed a notification architecture. And we were talking about how to be able to do this with databases at the time. But I can't help but think that this would be so easy to use with RTI now. But in the event that all of their operating rooms were taken, they needed to know that, because if there was some type of large emergency or big car wreck or something like that, where they needed a large scale trauma center and they could know how many people they could bring to individual facilities, they need to know whether they have OR rooms open or not. And they said, if we get to the point that none of our OR rooms are available, I actually need a notification to go out to this group and to these people to be able to let us know, because that kind of situational awareness is really, really big. And so I look at something like that, because people don't always think about, oh, the things that I log and I have to track and use in an application. What do I need to use for an event-based architecture? But anything that you go, if this, then this, to me, in my mind, it's like those event architectures are the ones where we've automatically said, here's the intelligence. If this, then that, go do this. For example, if all the operating rooms are full, let's let people know that they can't use us as a Trauma One center if an emergency were to occur right then. But I'm sure there's other things you've worked with. And Matt, Chris, you guys tell me who wants to go first, but give me some examples of like some architectures or some things where you've been talking with people, and, as abstract as you can make it. What are some things that you're finding? What are some solutions to problems that you may have that you're going, hey, not only can we solve this, but we can make this a lot better?
Yeah, I think the use cases become so varied because they're, sorry, Matt, yeah, I'll jump into it and then you can go after. But I think the use cases are so varied when it comes to event-driven architectures. We're really just starting to scratch the surface of all the things that are possible, right? I think there's, to your example, that's one use case, and that's kind of one thing I can go leverage an event-driven architecture for. But when we look at all the reporting and all the things that we've done to go manage exceptions and go manage like all these different business processes and workflows and all these different pieces, we're really still just at the very beginning of understanding where all the applicability for all these different event-driven architectures comes in. And that's where I think elevating the conversation and part of the inspiration for this workshop was to say, as we look at an event-driven architecture, what are all the action systems that you can use to go consume that data? Right? Because although we might not always need a report, maybe we want to build a report, or maybe we want to go create a trigger, right? And if this, then that, right? Like you said, there's no beds available. Send out an alert. You can't use me as a Trauma One center right now. Or whether it's a conversational experience or an agentic experience or all these different pieces. One of my favorite demos to show is leveraging real-time intelligence and data agents together in Fabric, right? Because being able to leverage real-time intelligence to say, here's the business process, whatever is occurring, and then have a data agent on top, and not just ask a data agent a historical question, but ask a data agent a very targeted question. Who's on shift right now? Where are they currently at? Of all my drivers who are currently dispatched, where are they on their delivery routes? Are they in progress? Are they unloading? Are they loading? Are they delayed? How fast are they going? Or if I have someone waiting for them, are they on time? Am I wasting money by having just someone sit there waiting for a delivery to arrive? But there's so many use cases, and there's so many things that event-driven really applies to, that we can look and we can start to say, how do we unpack? What do we look at all these different pieces, right? I think of things like, manufacturing plant floor, or logistics use cases, or healthcare use cases, or banking use cases, and finance, and all these different things that come to play. And like, there's a use case in every industry and every organization around measuring that business process. When that thing occurs, then let me know about it, or then go take whatever this downstream subsequent action is. So Matt, over to you.
No, I think that's well said. A lot of the conversations are still exploratory because it's coming from a perspective of the traditional architectures we've had. So people will be like, okay, well, my data stores this. How does it play here? Or I just have, I'm just a SQL Server shop. Like I don't think this really does anything for me. But when you think of transactions as events, and then needing the ability to take actions or notify people or something like that when certain things happen, whether that's detecting fraud or an outage or, you know, whatever. You're right. Everybody has the use case, and it's kind of letting people know that this stuff exists, which has made it really fun to talk about, because though that's starting to change, because real-time intelligence is definitely having its moment. You know, as the couple of years have gone along, a lot of people, this was all just brand new. So they're trying to come from a shop that's maybe running like SQL Server and SSIS. And they're like, okay, well, what is all that here? And when you start talking about, you know, there are things that you can do here that you've never been able to do before, it's really cool to watch that light bulb go on. And yeah, there's all kinds of use cases that we haven't even thought of. So that makes it a lot of fun to talk about.
Well, and I know. Oh, Dan, go ahead.
No, that's really cool, because it makes me think about a situation where we have in Florida. And Brad, you and I worked at a Southeast chain. I'm going to say it out loud. Public supermarkets. We worked there, right? And we would.
Yeah, you could go on my LinkedIn. It's not hidden. It's not hidden on yours. Yeah,
it's not a secret. And by the way, Publix, we are accepting. No, I'm kidding. But so I'm sitting here from a workshop level, like, and I'm going to use my Tales from the Field code to get my $500 discount off to my standard pricing, right? And I'm looking at I'm looking at this workshop, right? And I'm sitting in retail, or let's just pretend I'm sitting at Public supermarkets. We have this thing down here. Folks may have heard of him, hurricanes, and people go and buy the products they need the day before, right? The storm's going to hit. Well, water sells out, bread sells out. I can see lots of use cases for this where we could track real time the products that we need, find where our drivers are, like you mentioned, Chris and Matt, and identify, you know, okay, you need to take water to store A or store B, and we can see on the map how quickly they're going to be able to get there and reroute our drivers so that folks can get the provisions before the storm occurs. Also, I can see for the shopping after the holidays, right? The Friday shopping after Thanksgiving. I see a huge use case for this, right? Where you can identify your point of sales, and do I need to bring in Dan to work the cash register? Do I need to bring in Chris to work their stocking? So I love it. So I was just thinking, you know, there's a ton of applications. So if you're on the fence of going to this workshop, right? If you're not going to the SQL Server workshop, that some 3 guys are doing that are really good at that as well. If you're on the cusp of choosing this, it applies to retail, it applies to manufacturing, all these different industries you mentioned. So do not go if you're like, oh, we don't have any usage for RTI. This workshop will show you that.
Yeah, and I think to your point, you just touched on a use case right there when you were talking, right? If I have a bunch of water and I know that there's a storm coming and I need to reroute it, right? And we've worked with customers on some of these pieces before. It's not a water use case, it's a use case, it's a supply chain use case, right? Of, hey, I have, you know, I probably only have 2 of these things in my entire organization because they're, you know, maybe $100,000 or multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment. I don't want to have, or I can't have 5 or 10 of those. But if something breaks, I want to be able to say, where is it? How quickly can I get it to wherever I need it to be and wherever I want it to go? And I think to your point, it's the same kind of concept, right? Of, hey, there's a storm coming. I have water. I know I'm expecting this kind of a spike in sales. Where can I pull it from? Can I pull it from maybe some of my stores that are farther away, that are out of harm's way, and say, can I reroute that effectively? Or, hey, there's a delivery that's headed to Jacksonville and I want it to go to Tampa instead, or I want it to go to Daytona, or I want to go send it, like, it's already been dispatched, but I can reroute those things dynamically. Those are the types of scenarios where event-driven architectures really start to shine, because they can really allow us to act on data at an unprecedented speed, because we never used to be able to do these types of things before. It was, oh, it's been dispatched, sorry, it's too late. Like, it's just like, maybe we'll reevaluate it again later, but now you have the ability to really, at any moment in time, be able to reroute effectively and say, here's all the different things that I want to go accomplish with that. So to your point, don't take the attitude of there is no use case. There is a use case. Every business process has an RTI use case. It's just, how does it Do I want it to fit, or how does it fit, or what are these kind of different theses? What are those things that I want to go take? And far too common, a lot of times I talk to users and I talk to people, and it's, well, we want to make it available on this report faster. And I'm always challenging people, think past the report. Don't think about, I want to make it available on the report faster. Think about what does that person do with the report once they get it, right? So once I get that report and I look at it, I should be looking at it and I should go be making some decision, right? What's the decision that you need to go make? And is there a way, or is there an opportunity for me to say, hey, instead of me making you leave the context of your day and going to a report, or is there a way for me to integrate it into that, to your business process, into your workflow, where you don't have to leave, you don't have to move all these different pieces? And so, like, super exciting. Like I said, I think we're at the dawning of a new era in terms of data, and it's one of the reasons we put data in motion in the title, because data in motion, and so we try to make it really relatable.
So when we were behind the scenes previously, Tom, you had a really good question. I'm gonna cue you up to be able to ask it, because I think it's a good one. And I think it's relevant for us to get, especially early on as we're talking about this.
Oh, is that my cue?
Yeah, that's your cue.
I thought you were really going to lead into this. Okay. So here's the thing. I've been listening to y'all yammer about this real-time intelligence here for how long now? 20 minutes. And it just got me thinking that I've been hearing about how, real-time intelligence is, the thing for more than 15 years, back to Stream Insight, right? And every time there's like a new feature or functionality in SQL Server that has to do with processing live streams of data, I keep hearing about how important this is. But yet, is it? Like, I understand there are some industries and there are some reasons, but I just feel like these are solutions looking for problems, because you're trying to tell people, look at the thing you can do. And I think most of the market is saying, yeah, I could do that. Why? Why do I need to do it? What's in it for me? And in order to do it, you're actually making things in a way more complex, right? If you think about dealing with the streams of data, and lastly, God, it pains me, but I have to say it, is SQL Server even the right tool or the right platform for this? Because there are other companies out there that work with live streams of data very well, very well. So I think that's a lot rolled into one sort of question, comment, concern. Like, why now? Why is this so important? Why would I choose Microsoft's technologies over any of the competitors? All right, I'll be quiet.
So I'll take parts of that, because it goes back to a project that I worked on a few years back now, and a lot of the real-time intelligence components, like we're looking at basically software as a service presentations of services that have been in Azure for a while, event hubs and things like that. I worked on a project for a client, and it was a large engine manufacturer. So they made engines for trucks and really big vehicles and all that. And their use case at the time was basically predictive maintenance. Like, if I know I have a truck going down the road hauling, a load of refrigerated stuff, and that engine is 200 miles from, either breaking down or needing some sort of significant work done, I need to know before it leaves. So they wanted to put those Azure services together to do that. And the services were fully capable of doing that. So technically this was all feasible. And this is a few years ago. Where that project broke down is basically, and this company was fairly good size, they couldn't figure out organizationally how to resource it, because they're like, well, I don't know what kind of development this is. My data team doesn't know anything about Azure Event Hubs or Event Grids or any of that. My app devs, that's not their kind of stuff. They don't, so they really couldn't find an internal team to support it, because they're like, well, it's data, but it's streaming information. And yeah, maybe we're going to put an app wrapper around it, but it's not that it was technically super difficult. It just fell in a weird way for them. And I think some other organizations too. The trick with this stuff is you don't have to write a ton of code to do this. And it does integrate pretty well with the other parts of Fabric to the point where organizationally, I think, if I had that client now, I think it would make perfect sense for them to tell their data group, this belongs to you. This is, part of our cloud data platform, and you can do this. We're going to give you the training. We're going to send you to Live 360 or a SQL Saturday or whatever. But you're capable of doing this. I think that's true now. So the barrier to entry is a lot lower. Obviously, the technology's progressed, but a lot of this stuff used to be possible, just much more difficult to do. And I think more importantly for the customers that I had at that time before RTI was anything, they couldn't figure out who to work on it, so they just wouldn't do it. So I don't know. Chris, you probably have some different takes there, but that's when I started getting into RTI stuff, that's the client I've always thought of. That, like, we did the demo and they're like, yeah, that's super cool. That's exactly what we want. We don't know who's going to work on it here, so we're not going to carry this work forward.
Yeah, I think you covered it pretty well, Matt. I think, we've kind of seen an evolution, right? And I think RTI has really brought a lot of the historical things together that were previously really challenging for us to go implement. Things like, we saw Stream Insight, then we saw things like Stream Analytics and Event Hubs and all these other things come together. But even as it evolved, one thing we know is that we needed a dedicated engine for it. And so just to clarify, I think one of the questions I heard behind the question, I think you asked, Tom, was that RTI is not SQL. It's an entirely different engine. It runs within Fabric. We leverage totally different technologies. And so it's a different way of thinking about it, but we've taken some of these tools where what we've seen evolve and what we've learned over the past 15 years and said, okay, so we went from Stream Insights to something like Stream Analytics and Event Hubs and all these different pieces and all those things that Matt just talked about that were really hard for organizations to go implement and were really challenging. And even when we did go implement, when we look at a typical data implementation today in an organization, and I think Matt covered it really well, a lot of these tools don't live with data teams today. Maybe they're using an Event Hub just to load the data into storage, and then they're processing it under a traditional pipeline, right? Or maybe they're not leveraging any of those things at all, and they're just processing. There's a whole nother process that runs completely disconnected from the data team that runs on a whole separate infrastructure with a whole separate team of people because the company's invested in resourcing that. Or maybe it's what Matt mentioned, right? Maybe they're aware of it and they're saying, hey, this is something we'd love to go do, but we don't think we have the resources. We don't think we have the expertise to be able to go manage it. And so what we've done from a real-time intelligence perspective is to say, instead of needing to have this deep expertise in all these different pieces, bring them together and pre-wire a lot of those components together, and then also make it really easy to go consume the data. So it's also not just about collecting it, but it's how do I consume this data in any way that I want to from all these different use cases that I have, where I don't need to re-engineer. I don't need to bring in that data in 20 different forms and have copies running all over the place. So it's really at its core, it's really about keeping that data in motion, but it's about keeping that data in motion in a no-code, low-code way where I don't need to be a streaming expert in order to be able to go do that.
Well, and your point about the engine is good because, and I know somebody on this stream gave a session once that referred to Kusto, I think, as like Microsoft's best kept secret or best. I forget what the title was.
The best service that you've never heard of.
That you've never heard of. That's it.
Yeah.
And it is like Kusto's a really cool engine. And that Microsoft's been using for 10 or more years now. So it's not, presenting it in a software as a service way is kind of new to us, but like they've been using this a long time. Kusto's really capable. You can talk T-SQL to it if you want. KQL is pretty easy to learn and very cool. I think for folks coming from kind of outside that world entirely that are like, ooh, this is running on SQL Server. SQL Server is not good at time series stuff. The engine's completely different. And honestly, one of the most fun parts of putting workshops and sessions together on this is doing more Kusto stuff because it's really cool and really fast.
So
if
Matt
I
and Chris,
could, I was just going to live a little bit of context real quick because, and I love it when people hear Kusto, or they may hear Azure Data Explorer, they may even hear a KQL database, or they may hear an event house. All of those things are the exact same thing. And Chris, nobody's told me to stop saying this, so you can tell me if you want me to stop. But when I describe this in Microsoft, first off, we don't love something if we don't change the name at least 4 or 5 times. And you know, it shows that we love it and there's a roadmap and we're still willing to do it and invest in it. It's confusing as it is to everybody else. It's just as confusing to us inside of Microsoft, but we still do it. But it shows that there's love there. The second thing I would say is that whatever you want to call it, Event House KQL database, this is the most AWS thing Microsoft has ever done. And what I mean by that is we built this internally because we needed a way to be able to take telemetry from the machines within our cloud, literally the thousands and thousands and thousands of individual telemetry units per second that arrive for every single machine and every single data center for every single region in all of Azure. And we needed to be able to look at the health. We needed to be able to look at the monitoring. We needed to be able to look at anomaly detection. We needed to be able to look at many different things. And we have this amazing place where we actually track all of this. That's on our campus. Scott Goo's office looks out over it, and it looks like it came out of a movie. It really does. And it is showing the trillions of denial of service attacks per second occurring. It is showing the health of every single service in every single region. And we literally were using this for so long because we needed to aggregate and we needed to query. We needed to be able to pull in multiple different streams and data types and then query this thing within seconds and have results and have it real time and streaming. And then somebody went, hey, this is really good. We should probably sell this to people. And so we did. And as you can see, we had a very hard time coming up with the name that we would use to be able to get it out there. But the fact is, when people say, how does Microsoft do it? This is how we do it. Like when you go, Microsoft is a big $1 trillion company. What solution are you using to track these things? We're using this. If you ever do any work with any of our product groups, if you do any work with any of our support teams internally in Microsoft, you're using these engines. You're using the systems to be able to take your T-SQL knowledge and convert it to KQL. You're using the events and the Copilot systems to be able to make this easier. We are literally, whenever people say, how does Microsoft doing this? I'm telling you, this is it right here. And this is what we're doing. The reason I would say that this is so different as well is I love what Chris said. This is an easy button when you think about it. You used to have to set up an event hub. You used to have to send information there. Then you used to have to take that data from an event hub, figure out how you're going to parse it and land it into a destination. That staging it to be processed was just one part of that. And when we do an event stream, I mean, that is the event hub for us right there, for us to be able to hook the data into, for us to be able to transform it, for us to be able to choose a source of where it's going to go. I mean, if you think about it, it's 1,000,000 times easier than it used to be to build all these individual components. This is more like going in a dealership and getting a car, whereas the experience used to be going in the dealership. I like this car. Great. We're going to send you the frame and the bumper and the doors, and eventually the wheels will assemble. I hope you have the tools to put it together. Chris,
I think just to kind of build on that, I think it's a great point to make that just because data is streaming doesn't mean it has to come from some strange format that we've not heard of. I've been given more than a hard time by more than a few number of people around, like, Chris, it sounds great, but you speak in such strange tongues, right? You talk about Kafka and MQTT and AMQP. Like, can't you just speak English like the rest of us? Like, why do you speak so differently? And I think the reality is, although those have really been common protocols for sending sensor data and certain specific types of data, they're not the only barrier to really moving to an event-driven architecture. When you really dive into an event stream in Fabric, you'll see there's lots of different data sources that you can connect to. You can connect to databases, you can connect to those sources, MQTT or an event grid or an event hub or whatever, but they're not prerequisites. So it's not like, oh, we're not using an event hub, so we can't use this. Like, you can leverage all of these tools and all of these things that we know to really keep your data in motion. And I think to kind of add to that a little bit, the the goal of the workshop and the goal of event-driven architectures is to act on data as soon as we get it. And so if you're getting a batch file that's loaded every 5 minutes and you want to process that every 5 minutes as it's coming through, like that's something that you can still leverage from an event-driven architecture perspective. Or if you're saying, hey, we don't have access to a source system, or we'd love to get this, but a lot of customers I talk to say, we love to get to our sensor data, but we don't have our sensor data. It belongs to such and such vendor, and then they surface it to us on a predefined schedule, like whatever that time of day is, right? Those are ways that you can work with that data. You can still make it event-driven. You can still load it. And I think to Thomas's question earlier around, hey, like whether it's Stream Insight or whether it's whatever these different things, we've been talking about this for a long time. What I think, in my opinion, one of Fabric's great superpowers is that I don't need to have 20 different places where I'm trying to pull all this data from in Azure. It's all in one spot. So if I want to pull batch data, if I want to pull those streams, if I want to create all those things into my event-driven architecture, I can do so in a really simple way that previously was really, really challenging. Like you said, I had to glue all these things together.
So Chris and Matt, to build on Tom's question, right? Why RTI, right? We have a lot of other source systems. So I run into this exact thing that Tom was, I think, calling out here. As I run into clients that have Databricks, they have Snowflake, they have Postgres, they have NoSQL environments, right? And they're not in Fabric. They're let me rephrase that. They're not really in Azure, right? What is the selling point to get my management to spin up that Fabric capacity? Why do I need to do this? What's the point? If I got it over here, why do it here and spin up, an F64 or whatever to be able to do this? Why when I have all that over there?
Yeah. So Matt, let me take this one, and then I think you can add to that.
Sure. Yeah.
So when we look at, I think, where data started, and to really understand the root of that question, Daniel, I think we need to go back a little bit. Before, in the early 2000s and the late 2000s, before the 2010s came along, which I know all of us here are old enough because I remember I've known all of you since I think back then. So we know we've all been around for a hot minute, right? But we used to have a concept of an operational data store, right? And then the operational data store would then send the data downstream into a data warehouse or whatever downstream analytics system that we needed to go consume. When we've really migrated to the cloud, we've really gone to data. Yeah, we're old, Daniel. It's a fact. There's a lot more gray in my hair now than you probably see on the camera. That's why I don't have a super high quality HD camera. But when we look at, I think what that journey looked like when we got to the cloud, it was, I'm going to go build my data lake, and then I'm going to go refine. I'm going to go create bronze, silver, and gold, and all these different layers, and I'm going to try to process data. That was fine for a while. But now what we've seen over the last 5 years or so in particular is, how do I process that data faster? How do I go through a medallion layer quicker? And we call that, at least I call that on the RTI team, the faster horses effect, right? I have a horse and I'm just trying to make it go faster. So how do I process data through my data pipeline quicker? What RTI, a great way to fundamentally think of it, is a supercharged ODS, a supercharged operational data store that happens upstream. If you still need those downstream systems, Databricks, Snowflake, your data warehouse, your traditional system, that's great. That's fine. You need that. You need to go be able to create those master data quality or those master data management rules. You need to go be able to apply all those things, and you need to be able to aggregate all that data historically and do all those different pieces. However, the other piece that we're missing is we don't have the ability to act on those things that are happening in the ODS in real time, right? When we created an ODS, we didn't just use it for reports, if we all remember. We used it for a lot of things, right? Of, hey, what's happening in my environment right now? Like, what are all the different pieces? We used it to alleviate pressure off of operational systems. We used it to go be able to create triggers and rule sets and flows of all the different flows that were supposed to support business processes. And as we've moved into a cloud-centric world, we've kind of lost some of those capabilities. But being able to think of RTI as a supercharged ODS, where I'm bringing this data in, I'm analyzing it, I'm looking at it on if you're not from the early 2000s, or maybe even if you are, right, you're probably familiar with Lambda architecture, right? But when you look at Lambda architecture, there's always been two sides to Lambda architecture. There's been the Lambda hot path, and there's been the Lambda cold path. Where I think we're seeing the technology and the evolution evolve is, instead of needing to say, I'm going to write it to two places at once, I can truly have a synchronous flow where I'm going to say, okay, go to the hot path. When I'm done processing on the hot path, send it down to the cold path and all the different things. But by putting it in that hot path first, you get all those action systems we were talking about, right? And I think one kind of key thing, and I wouldn't be able to forgive myself if I didn't say it, but I kind of am reserved in saying it as well. When we look at an operational data store or hot path analytics or all of these systems, when we look at an agentic AI future, those are prerequisites for those different pieces, right? I tell customers all the time, when you think of, I have an agentic AI application and it ran on the batch process that I run every 6 hours, or the batch process that I run every 12 hours or every 24 hours, is that going to really be useful to your organization? Is it going to give you the insights that you want? But if I can take that agentic AI application and move it into an ODS equivalent, like a Lambda hot path store, then all of a sudden that business value add that I'm going to get from that agentic AI application is so much more powerful. So in short, I think the answer to your question is it's going to unlock a lot more business value in all of these applications: agentic AI, conversational AI, new triggers, alerting, business process workflows, all these different pieces. And if you still want to leverage those traditional systems for reporting, then you certainly need them. So use them.
Excellent. I love it. Tom, that was a great question, because, you know, we were talking for 20 minutes, you asked the question and we talked for another 20 minutes just on this one. Did you have any follow-up or anything else you wanted to cover?
Well, I mean, in a way, I'm always trying to think of, like, how can you present this to somebody so that he can really understand the value in it, right? So, because oftentimes you just talk about these use cases. You know, imagine you were a machine shop, imagine you were this and that, and that's not what people have. They aren't those things. So how do you get them interested in understanding that there's more value in the data that they do have? Like, this is what we're really talking about. Like, you're trying to give them the tools so they can extract more value from the data they're working with on a daily basis. And I always come back to things like performance monitoring. And so I was just thinking, like, hey, and this has always been a thing for me for years, where you just have a process that mines the plan cache on a continual basis, whatever that process is. We'll call it RTI. And, you know, can grab and say, look for queries that have a memory grant that's very large, like more than the available memory for the instance. And then what I'd want to do is I'd want it to send a shock to the keyboard of the developer that wrote the code. So if real-time intelligence can do that, I think you'll see a real uptick in people wanting to use this technology, right? Now, I gotta say,
so Tom, I did have to let you know that we talked to the lawyers, and the lawyers said that we couldn't put the shock device on the developer keyboard.
See,
so just
you're going to go through a lot of keyboards.
So fun.
You're going to go through a lot of keyboards. Look, the shock doesn't have to be. It just has to be enough. It's, you know, it doesn't have to be like, I'm not talking like a pair of pliers and an outlet type thing. I'm just saying, it's just got to be enough that they learn.
It's just
note to self. I'll resubmit that. I'll resubmit it to legal with just enough in there.
Microsoft does not. Microsoft employees do not condone violence of any kind on this call, including shock therapy through a keyboard.
Just call it Developer Motivator 365. It'll breeze right through the legal process.
Oh my God.
Developer Motivator 365.
If that's not a product
that could be a thing.
At the end of next year, Microsoft is really missing out.
I know.
Oh. Well, it's been nice working there. To everybody, thanks so much for that. So I do want to take something you said though, Tom, and I'm trying to do my best Buck Woody, right? Let's boil this down to brass tacks, right? So if I heard you correctly, and tell me if I'm wrong, if you're a business, you're going, how do we make money out of this? Right? Because you're thinking this is an expense. I'm going to have to put new things. What's in it for me, typically for a business, means how do I make money out of this, right?
Well, I don't want to just say money, but it has to have value. It has to be worth it. It has to be worth it.
It is about money, though, Tom. Sorry to cut you off, right? But I think when you look at one of the great things about event-driven architecture is that it allows us to truly move data from just a place that generates reports, because arguably, how much money does a report generate? Is it an actual revenue generator for the business, or is it just a cog? Because 9 times out of 10, it's just a cog. And so that's a cost of good for anyone unfamiliar. But when you look at a report, right, it's like there's nothing there. But when you look at event-driven architecture, and you can start to say, what are all the things I want to integrate into my business? And I'm going to share a couple of real use cases from customers who've implemented RTI and are either achieving high throughputs in the production line on their manufacturing plant floor. That's millions of dollars in revenue. Or you talk about companies who are able to proactively analyze and understand what's happening in their data in real time because they're able to cut costs, right? Or I hate to kind of overuse the manufacturing analogy, right? But if I have a plant or a machine and it's offline, and it goes offline, and I can tell you about that, and I talk to customers about this quite regularly. So I load my data in batch every 6 hours or every 12 hours or every 3 hours. I can't react on that data for 3, 6, 12 hours. That machine was offline. It's been offline for 6 hours. Like, depending on what it is that you're making, whatever kind of widget that you're making, you're talking about thousands of dollars in revenue, millions of dollars in revenue that you're not able to find. So if you can get those signals from your data in real time and say, these are the things that I want to go understand and identify of what's happening, you can dispatch people and you can get back to recovery. And ideally, if you can start to get really sophisticated and better with your predictive maintenance, to start to understand what's going to fail and fixing it before it ever even fails, to really start to cut out some of those different pieces. So there's a lot of different use cases where you can start to look at an event-driven architecture in terms of saving me money because I'm not paying for that downtime, or I'm not paying for those different pieces, or potentially turning that data into a monetary stream. When I talk to ISVs, one of the things we talk about a lot, when you can process that data and transform that data, and you have a custom application that you're sending, the ability to move that data in real time is a competitive differentiator. So if I'm selling it and we're competitors, and I can say, well, we're processing that data and making that data available to you in real time based off whatever it is, we're analyzing XYZ, and then we're sending it to you and saying it as an application. That's a huge competitive differentiator for, say, you who's maybe processing that data every 3 hours and then saying, oh, I'm sending this to, I can make this data available to you in 3 hours from now. So there's a lot of different ways to, I think, start to think about how event-driven architectures become not just cost savings or avoiding or mitigating potential loss, but also being able to actually generate that value for whatever it is that you want. So there's a lot of different places where that kind of fits in, but where I think I would counter is I would kind of finish my points, say when we look at this type of architecture, there's so much more we can do with it rather than just I should go check that report and tell me if that machine is offline, because that's so slow and so reactive. Like, going back to my original point, it's like telling me how fast I was driving when I got somewhere.
Yeah, and I think you covered the business use case really well. The angle that I'm going to come from here is more like, if I'm a data professional, why should I care about this stuff? And what I usually share with people is, right, it always feels like there's something new to learn, right? The barrier to this isn't that hard. Like, if we can talk T-SQL, we can do this stuff. But what comes down from executives to management to us, wherever we are in that chain, is they don't know SQL Server from Fabric, from Databricks, from Snowflake, probably. But what they do know is that all the newsletters they read, and all the LinkedIn posts they read, and all their executive roundtables they're at, and all of that AI is a thing we have to have, and we can all roll our eyes. But I'm still talking to a ton of customers, like, tell us how to get there. Well, to get there, like Chris said earlier, you need that data fast. So in the leadership's mind, it's, I need my data faster. And if they come to us and say, well, I've got, we're a SQL Server shop and we can't do that, or we've got this data on Oracle over here and we can't do that, or whatever. RTI for me is kind of what brings it together, and it's been the differentiator for me for Fabric from its competitors for a while. It's the way we get the data in faster to take action on it faster, almost no matter where it lives. The pressure on a lot of data people that I know is to do exactly that. And it's really difficult to squeeze a lot more out of the traditional architectures and systems we've had. They can feed something that does it, which is this. So yeah, I think you covered about every angle of the business case. But if people are sitting out there wondering like, why should I learn about this stuff? Obviously, Chris and I hope you come see us, but if you're not able to, like, is this something I should learn? That's why you're going to be asked, if you're not already, like, get me this faster. I need to know this faster. I need to take an action on it faster. And you're probably looking at your current setup and saying, oh, geez, I don't know how to do that with this. So it's good to know what's out there that can help you do that. Because our bosses don't care what platforms we're running on necessarily. They just want us to do what they said.
Absolutely. And one thing I would toss out as well, right? Because we talked about the money thing. How do I make money off of this? And every organization that sells retail, if you have something retail, or if you have some type of product that you're sending from point A to point B, you're using shipping. And just looking at shipping for a little while, well, there are a ton of different shipping providers, and we see a lot of trucks sometimes that are out on the road. Maybe, in Florida, we see a lot of Publix trucks. We'll see Amazon trucks. You'll see all these different types of trucks by different industry. But when you are shipping something, there's literally websites and there are forums long before there was Uber for everybody who is just driving around locally to be able to see, what is available, what is the price per freight. What is the goal? This needs to get from point A to point B, and they're looking at how they ship those things. All of that can be done using RTI. If you think about it, when you have something that's ready to go, that's ready to be shipped, as you're putting things together, as you have a business process, Dan mentioned that we work for Publix. I have to give Publix this. Publix used real-time streaming better than any company I've ever seen. Having worked for the government, multiple different branches of the government, and seen a lot of different things and worked with tons of different companies also as a consultant. Publix was absolutely amazing in the way that they used real-time intelligence. And they used it in every facet of the company that they possibly could. But I love this story about Publix. It was part of the reason I wanted to go there. It's the largest employee-owned publicly traded company in the United States of America. And it is owned by the employees. The majority of all the stock that makes up Public is owned by either current or former employees. And so constantly what they would do is they would look at, how can we make the business more efficient? How can we make more money? Because the number one people who benefit from that stock price and also for the stock payout are the employees. And so it wasn't just, so much a corporate movement of let's be quicker, let's be more efficient. These are real people that were, making good bonuses off of that stock as it would build up over time. And once a year, there was a stock payout. And it was, how can we make our organization more effective? And there were so many different ways that we use this in shipping, in warehousing. Like I go into Publix, I order some ham. If it is the last amount of ham that they're going to cut, that they go, hey, we need to order more ham and have it on that truck. A message is sent to headquarters that is then routed to a different database system that runs the warehouse, that pulls that ham on a list for a forklift operator to load into a truck to be able to get to it. And if you think about it, all those were manual steps at one point in time. Had to call it into somebody, had to call it into somebody, had to call it into somebody. And hopefully we didn't miss the deadline for the truck, or we might just not have ham for a day or two at that store if people wanted to buy it. And so using these things made them better from start to finish. Right. And I've always taken that inspiration away as I've worked at other places, because I couldn't help but look at things from a business perspective and go, how can we make this more efficient? How can we optimize it? How can we, and you hear this a lot, how can we do more with less? That's not just agentic. That's not about, replacing the thought process. That's going, we already know this step leads to the next step. How do we automate that? And there's a lot of real-time intelligence that allows us, and especially how easy it is to pull together now to go from that next step to the next step to the next step.
Yeah. I think that last thing you said is spot on too, because when you think about it, a lot of now, given as a consultant, I'm walking into data estates for a reason. It's not because everything is perfect. It's because there's something to improve or change or whatever. But a lot of the estates I walk into, the process of extracting data from something, dropping it somewhere, transforming it in some way, reporting on it, everybody knows those steps. But in a lot of it, there's almost now these kind of artificial barriers to it. It's like, well, we know this goes from here to here, and we know this team works on it here. And then that process just goes on and on and on. To your point, if we know all that, we have the tools to put it together now. And then, and also that can save a lot of the kind of menial work, the operational stuff where, I had a job, the schedule didn't fire last night because the box was down or it was rebooting for maintenance and the scheduler didn't go. The less points of failure we have in there where that data is just flowing at whatever speed, whether it's just a normal estate with normally, normal data flowing around, or you're streaming terabytes of stuff off of an assembly line. If we know those processes, we now have the tools to put them together and make our data estate run faster. That gives us more time to figure out how to get that value out of the data instead of just keeping the ecosystem up.
Absolutely. So let me throw this out, because I know it's one of the things that I think of all the time. We're getting down to about the last 4 minutes here. When you think about kind of the ETL, the development for a project, right? We've got a traditional way that you would put together a project and an architecture when it comes to tackling like a business intelligence data warehouse, where we're going to create a star snowflake schema. We're going to look at how we consolidate business units and things like that. When you look at projects for RTI, are there some foundational steps that you look at that you go, hey, when we're going to look at this project, we're going to identify this. We're going to go, here's kind of a pathway that we're going to solve.
Yeah. So Matt, do you want to go first?
No,
timed that perfect.
I need a drink. Yeah.
I timed it perfect. I was going for it. I think to answer your question, Brad, we always start with, we start from the right. What's the business thing that you want to go solve? And you just talked about a lot of those things in the context of, say, like Publix, or from that particular lens, or from that piece. What are the things that you want to go do, and then kind of evolve? We don't start with we're going to collect everything and then kind of go boil everything until we find it out. It's what's that event, or what are those pieces when you're looking at event-driven architecture to say, what's the thing that you want to go do? And what's your goal? Do you want to answer predictive maintenance, or make predictive maintenance more efficient? Or do you want to go do anomaly detection on your data? Or do you want to go trigger an alert when these specific conditions are met? Or, do you have, hey, so-and-so watches a dashboard 24/7, 365. Are there ways that we can augment that so they can go do something else with their day, and we can go focus on, like an alert? Or is there just something we can go trigger to just go tell them, be like, hey, this condition occurred, you should go do X, Y, Z, whatever it is. And then we start working our way backwards into the design. Where do those things come from? What are those different elements that make it up that we need to go be able to answer that event, and then kind of move from there? So it's a little bit different, because we start at the end and kind of work our way backwards, rather than just kind of starting at the, we'll gather what we shall gather and we'll kind of figure it out. So start at the end, answer your use case, answer the what do I want to use to make money? What do I want to go do to do the X, Y, Z, and then go from there.
Yeah, great stuff. Matt, I didn't know if you had anything that you wanted to add to that, so I was just throwing you up on the spot.
He covered everything very, very well.
Okay, excellent. Well, so the last thing I'm going to do is I want to make sure, Dan, I think you put it in the link earlier, but I do want to say, everybody who is here, who's been listening, or if you're coming and you're watching us after the live stream is out, please go check it out. Check out the Live 360 event, but also this is the workshop by Matt Grodon and Christopher Schmidt. There's a lot that you're going to gain from doing this. This is an absolutely wonderful workshop. If we weren't going at the exact same time, I would be bugging both of these guys to let me hang out and be able to learn right along with them. So it's going to be a really good time. And remember, because they are right next door, you can always come and say hello to us afterward. We will always hang a wonderful Monday. That's going to happen on Monday as well. After these treatments, know us a little bit better. I think last year it was a hard rock. We'll see if we get that's the thing I've got, though. I do want to say thank you so much to MVP Matt Gordon, Principal Program Manager, Microsoft Fabric Team, Daniel Taylor. Did I do something?
No, you completely broke up in your closing statement. So
Yeah.
we needed RTI to be able to tell us that was going to happen. So my brain was thinking weirdly. Go, time, you're clear.
I saw you laughing. Okay, you're good. And Microsoft MVP, Mr. Thomas Rock. Thank you all for joining us so much. Be good to one another out there. Bye, everybody.
Today's gonna be a good day. Wake up. Today's gonna be a good day.